an artist. Now what?
The first one comes from MJ Studios. Who's your inspiration to draw pictures?
Well, I always had the 5 pillars for me. I think it's more than 5, actually.
Okay.
So some are very common to everybody. But Jim Lee, definitely. X-Men #1 was probably one of the main things that got me
1991
into drawing comic books
itself.
So Jim Lee, David Finch, my good friend David Finch. You can tell my art style is very mimicked off of him. Great influence for me. Alex Ross, love Alex Ross's work. He was the first guy to kind of introduce realism for me. Anyway, like I'm sure people were
for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, but to make it work in the comic book,
yeah,
Alex Ross. And for those of you who've never seen an Alex Ross painting live, when I say painting, the actual original art, the reproduction never doesn't give it justice. You actually have to see the paint on the canvas for this thing. I've seen it once at Chicago Comic Con. He wasn't there, but they were selling his original art, and I'm looking at this thing like, man, the scan does nothing to what you actually see on the paper. His work.
Now, if you were a collector at the scale of like people who would drop that kind of money, would you be like, I'm buying it?
Oh yeah. But I have to have a lot of money to do that.
How much were they going for?
Oh, I don't remember. I don't remember.
Tens?
It was definitely tens. Definitely in the tens, for sure. But wonderful. But aside from that, again, one of my biggest influences, George Perez. I remember a Wizard article back in the day, and it kind of influenced my style, where they did an article on George Perez, and I think they were talking about when he did JLA Avengers back in the day, and they had an image there of all these Justice League characters and this really cool technical background.
Yeah.
And then the line said, "We don't know if George Perez gets paid by the line, but if he did, he'd be definitely worth it." That's what it said.
Yeah.
And that's when I really went to down my detailed route. I said, because also it's for me it was proof that you're working hard.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that anime artists don't work hard. Of course they do. They work extremely hard, right? At what they do, at their craft. But when you see someone put that much effort into just one panel, all the different lines, drawing every single window.
Yeah.
Now, it's something that where other artists are like, you're crazy. You don't need to do that. And they're right.
Yeah.
They are right. You don't need to draw every single brick. In fact, it might take away from your art if you draw that. But just having that display of effort online, in one panel, that made me think to myself, okay, I want to do that too.
You've got a Wonder Woman example, and I think you know where I'm going with that.
Wonder Woman. Oh, the Briareos?
Yeah.
That one? Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so let me tell that story really quick. And it's something I told before, but it's not often I get to design some characters for
ground up.
Ground up. So they had this character for Wonder Woman that they wanted Wonder Woman to battle. It was this giant, and his name was I still don't know how to pronounce
Briareos.
it. Is it Briareos? It's a character from Greek mythology, and Briareos has 50 heads and 100 arms, or something like that. And it was a challenge. I'm like, okay, how am I going to design this character? So I thought to myself, okay, what if he had like 4 main arms, but then he would have all these little arms sticking out from those arms. So I would technically only have to draw one arm, and I could do this really cool thing when he punches somebody, like all the arms on his arm would have these closed fists. It was really cool. And then for the head, so we would have a major head, but on top of his head would be all the tiny heads. So all the heads would be like little hairs.
Yeah.
Like little bumps on the top of his head. So I gave him a lot, and that was the character. I remember the cover artist, J.G. Jones. Love his work. Absolutely love J.G. Jones' work. So he asked them if I could send them the design so he could paint it.
Yeah.
And he took one look at that and he's like, I'm not drawing this. and the thing is, he gave away a huge spoiler on the cover. The way Wonder Woman defeated this character is she took Medusa's head and flashed it in front of the character, and he turned to stone. So J.G. Jones, instead of drawing the character, he painted Wonder Woman holding up Medusa's head instead.
Which is basically the ending of the fight.
Exactly. He showed how he defeated him.
Yeah.
And I can't believe that got approved. But he was probably like one of them, there's no way I'm drawing this character. So
And that was, and I guess that was around the time where the cover had to have some context to the interior story.
Oh, for sure.
Where these days, that doesn't even matter
Well,
anymore.
you know what? Well, especially if they're trying to do these gimmick covers where they want everyone
variants
to
and
buy
whatever.
it. But, you know, again, the essence of a cover, just to go a little bit off topic here, the essence of a cover is so that the ordinary person walking by, stop by. It's like a thumbnail.
Yeah.
Right? They're going to stop by, look at that cover, and pick up that book.
Yep.
And just to take a peek inside. That's the job of a cover artist. Same thing as a thumbnail, a YouTube thumbnail.
They say
You gotta
don't judge
stop
a book
people.
by its cover,
Right.
but we all judge
We all
books
judge because
by
that's
their
what we
covers.
see. How can
Yeah.
we judge the interior if we don't even pick up the book and take a look through?
Right.
Just like a YouTube video. How do we know what the YouTube content is if I don't click on that thumbnail to see what? Oh, that's a cool thumbnail. What's this video about? Right. So it's the same type of thing. But in that sense, so George Perez is there. Brian Hitch, huge influence of mine. Hopefully, I can get him on this podcast. In terms of work ethic, again, it's that detailed thing. When I saw Ultimates for the first time, the amount of work he put into every panel, and then I went back and revisited his work on The Authority, his oversized Justice League, which, and for those you don't know, Mark Michael here did an amazing interview with him years ago.
Well, that was back in the day.
Back in the day,
Yeah.
and reading that interview and everything he went through, like money he sacrificed to do these oversized drawings and stuff like that, which was pretty insane. And hopefully we could have him on this podcast so he could talk about it himself. But that really influenced my style in terms of doing those type of buildings, to the point where I actually had to draw back on it. I was putting so much where C.B. Cebulski, who currently is the editor-in-chief at Marvel, like he was a great resource for me at the time. He was always kind to me, always answered my emails. But I brought, I sent him samples, and he actually gave me Brian Hitch as an example. He goes, well, look at the detail he puts. He doesn't put as much detail as you are in your panels here, because I was drawing every window, but I was also drawing the windowsills. I was drawing and I was shading it too. So what was happening was the main essence of the panel got lost
Because there was so much.
exactly, right? So people weren't looking at where they needed to look at. But Brian Hitch has a way of balancing that, where we are looking at what we need to look at, but he's still able to put in those detailed pieces of art behind, or supporting the story. I always say that, supporting the story. So I learned a lot from that and from his particular work there. So who did that? Just to recap: Jim Lee, David Finch, Alex Ross, George Perez, Brian Hitch. I'm trying to think. I think there was
I got one.
more. You got one?
I think I know who it is.
Who it is?
Travis Sharry.
Travis Sharry, yes.
Yep.
Absolutely. There you go. Thank you. Thank you for that.
No
I
problem.
wouldn't have remembered that if that was.
Well, he's not as well known these days in the comic
definitely
world
is.
because he's moved somewhere else.
If you haven't seen Travis Sharay's work, which you probably haven't, a lot of his older stuff, like he started off drawing very similar to Jim Lee, and he used to draw a comic called Dark Stars. That's how I actually got introduced.
Yep.
My friend, my buddy Todd, back in the day, he was one of my best friends in high school. Actually, his name was Todd Foster. He introduced me to Travis Sharray. So there was a comic book store near my high school, and we would go there all the time.
Right across the street,
Yes,
I remember.
yes, you remember that, right? And he introduced me to. He goes, look at this guy. He draws like Jim Lee, right? And then I looked at it, this book called Dark Stars, and I'm like, that's very Jim Lee-esque. And then we freaked out when it turned out Jim Lee hired him to be his replacement on Wildcats, on his Wildcats. So he drew a lot of issues of Wildcats. But the thing is, he evolved from someone drawing Jim Lee to something. I don't know how to describe his art. It was completely different, where it felt more real.
Yeah,
he
he
developed
took
this-
a route that looks very much like the European comics that you see, like Enki Bilal's and stuff like that, right?
Yes.
Like your humanoids and whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it changed, and just the way he did folds, like it was just something about his characters that I absolutely love. Now the problem with Travis was it took him forever.
It's like worth it though. Like when you finally see it.
It was worth it to see it. So in my mind, I was always like, okay, I'm gonna be the on-time Travis Sharray. That was me. That was me.
Yep.
Actually, I think Steve McNiven took that title.
He did.
Yeah. Because when you looked at,
but you see that evolution still in the way that they both draw faces.
Exactly.
There's that relationship.
Exactly. When he did, was it Meta Barons? I think.
Meta Barons, yes.
Oh yeah, but he did this book called Meta Barons, and they only released like 4 pages. He did in like 2 years of work. Like, because he colored the thing too. But yeah, Travis Sharray, yes, that was the 6th person. Because I knew there was like 6. But him, in terms of the actual style that I drew faces and everything, he did 6 after after he took over for Jim Lee and did some issues of Wildcats, he did a relaunch of Wildcats.
Yeah.
I have that trade paperback, and that trade paperback is so worn out from me flipping through those pages so many times, trying to copy his faces so many times, trying to copy his style. But yeah, definitely Travis Sharry on top of the list. Those are the 6 in terms of me developing my comic book art style. Now, these days, a few others starting to creep in there. But I think the major one is Art Germ. Stanley Lau.
Yeah.
Stanley Lau's work, incredible work, especially the way he draws women. I really, really love his stuff and his style. So yeah, definitely he's on the top of that list of newer guys that include, because I haven't really included anyone in that list for a while, but I do find I look at his stuff a lot.
There's just something about his artwork where it's just like you look at an image that he draws and it's like you can't look away from it.
Right.
You're just like, oh, okay.
Yes, absolutely.
His covers will sell no matter what's inside.
Right.
It's one of those, right?
Exactly. It's amazing. His work's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of Transformers, though, in terms of mechs, that's something a little different. I never really had a Transformers artist per se that I followed, but a couple of influences in terms of the mech work that I do. Number one was the old Takara art books.
Oh, yeah.
Those were phenomenal. And that's what we looked at when we were working on Transformers, when we got the license. That's the kind of style we were mimicking. We were literally mimicking off of those old Takara art, character art that they did. So I have no idea who the artist was. But the way they drew that, little metal things that they would draw.
Yeah.
Like they would add these like little tiny squares in there for no reason sometimes, but it just gave it like a sense of scale.
Yeah.
I'll show you some, like there's these Metroplex and Triptychon pieces of art that really influence the way I do these detailed drawings that I do on my YouTube channel.
I think I remember. I think I remember seeing some of these. I can't name the artist either, but it's almost like as if a square was just a little bit bigger on this guy, and then when you see Metroplex and you see those same squares, it's almost like putting that quarter next to the thing to give you a sense of scale, right?
For sure.
That's what those squares' purposes were.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So again, big influence, and then influence came from outside of comics when I drew mechs. Doug Chiang, all the Phantom Menace.
Yep.
Yeah, all those art books, the Phantom Menace, like Attack of the Clones. I told this story many times. I actually bought those books before I really sat down and watched a Star Wars movie. I was looking at the art books, and that's what brought me into Star Wars.
Yeah, because you were not a Star Wars fan.
I was not a Star Wars fan. Yeah, until him.
You did not want to watch it when you would come over at my house.
Right?
And I had huge Star Wars fans.
I did not watch it.
You're just like, I don't want to watch it right now. Let's go to
Yeah, you were the Star Wars fan. I wasn't the Star Wars fan. But those designs that he did, especially the way he did gears and stuff like that, I started incorporating that. Feng Zhu, when Feng Zhu came on board, we mentioned them earlier. Just the way he handled technical and robots, the way Feng Zhu drew robots. That really influenced.
It's pretty crazy, yeah.
Really influenced my style when it comes to.
So if it wasn't for
Doug Chiang, that's where I developed my style from.
If it wasn't for Doug Chiang and Feng Zhu, we would not have had those 2 giant murals.
Oh no, that's very true.
Wars.
That's very true. Or
or
the Transformers mural that I did too, right?
Actually, yeah,
or
that's
the Transformers
true.
Mural.
Yeah.
So they were a great influence on that as well. George Perez, like all of those guys. So that was a very long answer.
Well, there you go, MJ Studios.
But that's everything. That's a lot of my different influences.